Hi, people tuning in now. Welcome to our Q&A. This is our weekly Q&A that we do. Here we go. Shannon Wild is our guest. The internet seems to be working, which is great. Yay! Hello, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Yes! Great, thanks. Sorry, the internet's on and off here, so it's great that
I
that it's
completely
working today.
understand here as well. So
Are you
I
you're in South Africa right now, right?
I am.
Yeah.
Yes. You're in
So,
Mozambique?
yeah, same time zone, which is useful.
Perfect.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's a
Um,
pleasure.
for everyone tuning in at the moment, this is our live Q&A series that we run every week, and we bring amazing guests on, like Shannon here, to talk about conservation from different perspectives. And so, yeah, do you want to introduce yourself to our audience, Shannon?
Sure. So I'm Shannon, and you might be able to tell from the accent, I'm Australian originally, but live in South Africa now, and I'm a wildlife cinematographer and photographer.
Awesome. Okay. And then for people tuning in that might not know who Love the Oceans is, I'm the founder of Love the Oceans, and we're a marine conservation organization based in Mozambique. So we're working to establish a marine protected area in Jangamo, which is the area that we're in. And we do that through a holistic approach. So we do a lot of different areas of research and community outreach. We do fisheries research, humpback whales, coral reefs, ocean trash, marine megafauna, and then we do two community outreach projects teaching swimming and marine conservation, basic marine resource management in schools. But COVID obviously means that our work has changed quite a lot, and we can't get out and do all of our research and our community work that we would normally be doing. So we decided to launch this Q&A series to still have those conversations around conservation and give our audience different perspectives and things like that. So thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If it's cool with you, we've got loads of questions that were sent in beforehand, so we can just jump straight in with them.
Of course, sure. Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, so the first one, easy one to get started. How did you get into what you do? Like, what was your career path? How did you end up where you are?
It was very convoluted, so it wasn't a decision from the beginning. I was a graphic designer for quite a few years. After school, I found my love of photography actually through that by accident, but the passion for wildlife has always been there. So I was looking for a way to combine the two, but career-wise, I was working separately and then getting my animal fix essentially through volunteering and sanctuaries and just trying to be involved in that aspect. And I was also a wildlife carer for many years in Australia. And then when I found photography, it was just a natural fit to obviously have animals as my subject. And that was kind of it. So, yeah, and I was able to gradually turn that into a career and make that my full-time job. It took quite a few years of transitioning from sort of
Yeah.
one to the other. But yeah, that was 17 years ago now.
So one of the other questions was actually related to this, and it was how you learnt your photography technique. So you didn't like study it at uni and then kind of go into that. It was more of a natural progression.
Yeah, it was gradual. I'm self-taught in the capacity that I learned from other people's work and reverse engineering and lots of practice and mistakes and learning from that as opposed to formal training.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, for me, that's a good way to learn, like being hands-on. I seem to
yeah,
learn quicker.
definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, mistakes are also the best way to learn from
I
them.
agree. Yeah,
Unfortunately, but it's true.
so true.
um, okay, then someone has asked, what are the ways to make money with wildlife photography?
Yeah, it's funny. I was joking with some friends earlier today about this being the wrong industry to get into, much like many conservation
Yeah.
vocations. If money is the main thing on your mind, this is the wrong industry. But it is possible, of course. And I'm so fortunate that I've been able to make a living out of it. But it's been a very long and slow process to get here. So, in the beginning, diversification was the most important thing for me. So, something like wildlife photography and filmmaking, it's very niche and very competitive. So, when I started out, I shot everything. I did corporate, food, industrial, um, anything that I could get paid for. And of course, I was starting to make a name for myself, refine my techniques, develop a style,
Yeah.
which take years, and then lots and lots of networking. And that kind of, you know, eventually led to some paid work. And finally, I was able to exclusively focus on wildlife specifically.
Yeah, I feel like it's coming across a lot of like any of the jobs to do with wildlife. I think a lot of people get into it. You don't get into it for the money. Definitely not. You have to get into it because you're passionate about it.
Exactly.
Um,
That
and
has to be the
that's
motivation.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what you do. It's always people always ask me what I do for fun, and I'm always like, well, I my job. It sounds
exactly.
really
Yeah.
sad, but I really enjoy it. So that's also what I do for
No,
fun.
we're the luckiest ones.
Yeah, yeah. I think like yeah, it requires the same with the marine conservation. It requires like quite a lot of years of like picking up experience and networking with the right
Yeah,
people and building what you're doing before you can think about well, we even get lucky enough to get paychecks and things like that. So
exactly. Yeah,
a lot of hard graft.
yeah.
um, okay, and then someone's asked how you combine photography with conservation.
For me, that's a pretty easy one. I mean, conservation, just like any other industry, is visual based, especially in this day and age. So people in general are extremely used to high quality imagery now. I mean, we have a very high uh, quality level, and people are used to seeing high production value,
Yeah.
because obviously we have access to better technology these days than say we did 10, 20 years ago. But like anything, it's emotionally driven, and uh, imagery, especially footage, is so important in that, in evoking emotion and creating, a sense of connection. I mean, it's one thing to read a description on a page, and it's something else to be able to see it with your own eyes, to really hit home with people and to make people care. So it needs, conservation needs just as much as it needs the science and the understanding of behavior so that we can protect areas and animals. We need to be able to portray that somehow, that most people can have a connection with. And I think that's where the imagery is really important.
Yeah, I feel like scientists are typically not great at communicating what we're doing. So having that like visual storytelling aspect is so important to like get
Yeah,
the backers, the funders, the people, general people interested in it, like drum up,
exactly.
whether it's a petition or whatever. That kind of like media. I know for us, like when we started having, because we're partnered with a photography organization that helps us create media, and that changed how we could
Yeah,
operate because we had like when we came up with a new campaign and we were like, okay, we want to do a campaign with like, I don't know, the whales or the schools or whatever, we had photos to use for them. It's so much,
yeah.
it's so
I mean,
difficult to like
the
promote something if you
data
don't have
has
those photos.
to be there, of course. Like,
Mm.
you need the science, but it needs to be that combination to get the emotional hook as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's it's got to be the pairing to make it a kind of successful and be able to get it to reach everyone, especially nowadays, as you said, with all the like technology that's available when everyone has everything on their fingertips. So
Yeah.
so important to be able to reach people through photography and storytelling,
Yeah.
and filming as well, obviously. Okay, someone's asked, so in your bio, we have that you've worked with like lots of different brands and different organizations. Someone's asked, how did you come to work with National Geographic and the UN?
So I was fortunate enough to be approached by both of those organizations. And I mean, National Geographic certainly was something I grew up dreaming of. I never kind of, I mean, because I didn't go in specifically to this industry, you know, as a decided career path. I never even dreamed that that would be an option. But I'd been working for almost 12 years professionally, and it was a combination of being in the right place at the right time, when National Geographic had an assignment that needed to be done, and social media, so they knew that I was there, and having 12 years of experience, and therefore the content for them to see and trust that I would then be able to do the project for them. So it was a lot of stars aligning for that. And then the same with the UN. They possibly social media. They contacted me through my website, but I'm pretty sure it was a social media based thing. So definitely recommend being consistent on social media. Hence why we are here.
Yeah, exactly. Are you allowed to say where those projects were? Are they current ones? Or are they...
So the UN was more tapping into my archive. So it was a lot of countries, a lot of species, and a lot of different things. So at this point, I have a very large image archive. I mean, I think I have about 25,000 images captioned and keyword ready for sale on my website from the last 17 years. So there's a lot there. So that was able to cover a lot of countries and species.
Yeah.
Whereas National Geographic was actually Botswana.
Oh, nice.
My favorite places. Yeah. That was incredible. And after that first project and relationship, then I've been able to go on. I was hired to work on a bigger project in that instance, and since then have gone on to pitch documentary ideas and have worked on longer term projects.
Yeah. Nice. I visited Botswana for the first time and only time that I've gone last year, and it was amazing. Yeah,
Magic.
we were in like Kalahari. We didn't get to go into like the Okavango as much as I'd like to, but we were in Kalahari, and the lions were. It was incredible.
Kalahari.
Like,
yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I was in the Delta on this particular project, but yeah, Botswana is something else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously Mozambique's my favorite country in Africa.
I love Mozambique as well.
Not that I'm biased or anything.
Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah, Botswana's wildlife is just like mind-blowing. I've never seen anything like it, and the encounters are just amazing. Very jealous of that. Oh, and yeah, so I was reading that you used to be like more interested in like reptiles and that kind of like area of things. What intrigues you most about reptiles?
I think I'm fascinated just by how different they are to us. I don't know, it's something that's fascinated me since I was tiny. I was always chasing after lizards and trying to catch things as a kid, and for some reason reptiles have always piqued my attention, and so as growing up and then into early adulthood, I had reptiles as pets, and they're just So fascinating. I mean, there's so much diversity and beauty, and I know they're often vilified, but if you can take a step back from any preconceived notion or sort of
Mm.
fears that you have, and just take a look at like the colors and the patterns, and it's mind blowing. I mean, they're stunning. So, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to articulate why. They've just been a fascination for me. And it's the first thing when I first got a camera, that's what I took pictures of because I was very involved in the reptile community in Australia. I had pet reptiles, so that was my subject. And I would practice on my pet lizard and snake. And yeah, it just kind of snowballed from there. And here we are today.
What pet reptiles did you have?
So I had what's called a central netted dragon, which is not a common lizard, certainly wasn't back then. So a lot of people might be able to picture a bearded dragon, which is a pretty common pet. So that's quite a bit bigger. The central netted dragon is a desert species, and it's quite tiny and long and thin with this beautiful reticulated pattern on its back, and black and orange. And
Wow.
yeah, I was so fascinated with that species, and there was so little information that after quite a few years of research, I ended up publishing my first book, and it was about the central netted dragon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it wasn't photography related at all. My first book was yeah, reptile based, and their ecophysiology and how to properly care for them, because the information just wasn't out there. So yeah,
Yeah. I've got two geckos that live with me here, but I couldn't
I
call
love
them my
them.
pets, but I gave them names and they hang out with me all the time. We
I have lizards everywhere around this house.
we
Yeah.
team efforted where my stove is, you have like a light right over the stove, which means all the moths obviously like
Yeah.
aggregate and it's so annoying. And I'm like cooking, and if you're not like right by the pot, a moth will just dive bomb into your food. And this massive moth flew at my food, and I just swiped it out the way and accidentally swiped it straight into Gary's mouth, and he was just like, and I was just like,
I mean, he's
teamwork.
appreciative.
Yeah, that was
Thanks,
great.
Mum.
She was like, I wish I'd filmed that. That was like perfect.
I mean, it's handy to have little,
Yeah,
yeah,
very
sure.
handy. Big lizard fan. Um,
So cute.
okay. Then someone, oh, still on the subject of reptiles, someone asked, are there any myths that you'd like to dispel about reptiles?
I mean, there's so many. One that comes to mind is not all lizards have legs. That's
Ooh,
a lot of people don't realize there are some legless lizards that are mistaken for snakes, and of course, snakes are probably more vilified than lizards are,
yeah.
so can be quite persecuted. There's the story that goes around of, you know, the pet snake laying against their owner and sizing them up to eat them, like just silly stuff like that that kind of perpetuates, which is obviously not true. And
Yeah.
probably what people maybe find most surprising is that they all have character, different personalities, just like any animal, just like us. Um, so once you actually have some time to get to know them, they can be very, very different, even within
Yeah.
the same species.
Because you
Yeah.
spent some time with Komodos, right? I saw an amazing photo of you with a Komodo like half a meter from you. Really
Yeah,
impressive.
it
What
licked
were
my
you doing?
camera. It was, yeah, licking my camera.
Wow.
A dream assignment. So for me, Komodo dragons are the pinnacle reptile to see in the world. I mean, they're the biggest lizard on Earth. Obviously, crocodiles are a separate species. So when
Yeah.
it comes to lizards, they're the biggest, and they're just so impressive. And it doesn't hurt that they live in a beautiful location in Indonesia. So I've been there a few times to document them. And yeah, the last time I went, which I specifically filmed them, that's what the pictures I know you used to promote this talk.
Yeah.
I had uh, a few close encounters. I mean, obviously, had to get permission to film from parks officials, and there's, you know, people off to the side making sure we don't do anything wrong and everyone's safe. But you know, when you spend a lot of time with reptiles, just like any animal, you start to pick up on body language, and it's a lot more subtle than, say, a leopard or a lion, but it is there. So you can see, you know, if the body tenses, or, like, you know, the positions change, or, you know, the focus changes. So they were completely relaxed and were just really curious. So I did have one come up, and it was licking my lens, because that's how they perceive their world. Komodo dragons have a forked tongue like snakes, and so they essentially taste, and that also tastes the air and takes it up through what's called a Jacobson organ, and that is like having stereo taste and smell, so they can even determine the direction of that. And so a very sensitive organ. So, and of course they can't grab something and say, what's this?
Yeah.
They're going to use their mouth, you know, like sharks do. It's, you know, they have to lick it or bite it to determine if it's inanimate or if it's something that they would like to investigate further. And in this case, obviously they're tasting glass and metal, so that's not very interesting. And you know, realize that, nah, that's boring, and move on to the next thing. So
did you have to clean your lens quickly after that, or?
Yes, and there's footage of me, because obviously I'm trying to be cautious and not do any rapid movements, because that will definitely get their attention. But I'm trying to maintain focus, and when you're filming, that's all manual focus. You track the animal manually. So it's coming up, and I'm trying to focus closely, and then it will lick the lens, so I have to pull my hand away, and then I'm trying to focus again, so without getting it too excited. But yeah, they were perfectly fine, just curious, and so impressive.
Yeah, that is quite the experience.
Yeah.
You don't meet many people that have stories with Komodo dragons like that.
I love
Very
it.
cool. Okay, someone's asked, do you have a favorite outdoor activity? And I'm going to say, apart from photography and filming.
Oh, that would have been a really easy question. Honestly, anything that has to do with animals. If there's animals involved, then even if it's just observing them doing their thing, then I'm happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of whales here, and being able to whale watch is one of my favorite things. Although going
Especially
out on
something
sups and
at
having them.
scale. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mind blowing. We went out supping the other day, stand up paddleboarding, and even though I could stick my head over the side of the board and listen to the whales in the water myself, we dropped the hydrophone because we do acoustic research, and I hit record, and it was so cool just sitting on the board, like legs dangling in the water, listening to the whales singing, and I was like, yeah, this is why I like my job.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pinch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being out with
Amazing.
animals is just such a nice and rewarding experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially when the interactions are all on like their terms and they choose
Yes.
whether to come
You
and
get
hang
to see
out
them
and all the rest of it.
behave naturally and relaxed, and how they would. Yeah, it's something else for sure.
Yeah, it's so cool. What is the cause that you're most passionate about?
Oof, that's very hard. I I don't think I could choose one. I mean, I support a lot of different charities that and organizations, you know, wildlife related, that I've had the privilege of working within the field, and that covers so many, you know, different species and countries, and you know, habitat protection as well as anti-poaching and wildlife protection in general, ocean-related conservation. I mean, I couldn't. No,
It's like picking a
I can't
favorite
pick a
child.
child. Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
you have a jewelry line, right? You have your bracelets that you do, which are beautiful, by the
Yeah.
way. And you support, yeah, there you go. You support multiple conservation organizations through that,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
assume those are the ones which are like closest to your heart. Um,
Exactly. And like I said, I mean, I only collaborate with organizations that I know personally, that I have
yeah,
worked with, and I've seen the work that they do in the field. So I know I can trust what they're doing and I support it. And so that way, you know, if people are going to invest money in something,
they can be
yes, you
100%
get a nice,
confident.
yeah, beautiful product. Uh, but I can, yeah, convert that confidence hopefully to the consumer so that they, you know, feel like they're helping to make a difference, and it makes such a huge difference. I mean, especially like as you would know, here in Africa, like that money just it goes further here,
Yeah.
and it's so desperately needed. And yeah, it's so nice to just be able to give something back. And if I can give the consumers a nice product, but also a reminder, like a physical reminder and a talking point, then all the
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great talking point as well to spread the word of the organizations as well. Like, oh, that's a nice bracelet. Where'd you get it from?
Yeah.
Wow, I have a whole story.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
talking point. um, okay, and then someone's asked, what is the most exciting job or assignment that you've ever done?
Okay, so I won't say Komodo again because we've talked about that. It's definitely up there. But polar bears in the Arctic is pretty hard to beat as well. That
Wow,
was
yeah.
magic. And I had the good fortune of doing that quite a few times. I would go every summer for a few years. And but the very first year that I went was still the best polar bear sightings that I had out of all the trips. But it also being the first trip and the first polar bear, I mean, and I hate the cold, but it was so worth it.
Yeah,
It's
that's pretty
magic.
awesome.
And the landscape is incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
polar regions are pretty amazing. They are definitely on my list.
mind-boggling. Yeah, yeah.
Um, just to counteract that one, what's the most challenging assignment that you've had?
Oh my goodness. To date,
Yeah.
easily filming a Black Panther in India for 18 months.
Wow.
Um, so that's was for National Geographic. That came out earlier this year on Nat Geo Wild. And so I spent 18 months there with my husband and trying to track this one individual melanistic leopard in this very dense jungle. Um, yeah, to date has been the hardest project ever. And I managed to break my back on that assignment as well. So it has multiple layers of why it was so
Whoa.
challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely
But just
makes it
finding that cat
more
to film
challenging.
was tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you look like you're recovered now from your back,
Eh,
more or less.
let's
A
say
little bit.
that. Sure.
Marshmallows, that's what we say here,
Yeah.
more or
Next
less.
subject.
um, okay, and so a little bit on like career advice from a couple of people. What are the steps for an amateur photographer or someone who's just starting out to get into the industry, get their foot in the door, kind of thing?
So from personal experience, I did a lot of free work. Um, I mean, like I said, I diversified at the beginning, but that was a great way to hone my skills as a photographer. But obviously, shooting food and corporate didn't get me in any doors in the wildlife industry. So it
Mm.
helped me sort of refine my craft. But in terms of getting the work in wildlife, it was networking is key. When I started, we didn't have social media, so I highly recommend social media because even now that has led to and provided me with a lot of opportunities and networking with organizations that I probably wouldn't have had a way to connect with otherwise. But yeah, I did a lot of free work, a lot of networking, and that eventually led to getting, you know, paid jobs here and there, and then more and more. So, I mean, it was a very gradual thing. Networking is the big one, though. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people forget that, like, everyone is at the end of your fingertips now with social media. Like, you can just message, like, and reach out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what have you got to lose if you do and you don't even hear back? I mean, that's, you know, still further
Exactly.
than not doing anything at all. So definitely I would offer your services and pursue it. And at the end of the day, persistence, because
Yeah.
that's what's going to make you stand out, apart from all the people that have given up along the way. Yeah.
Yeah. True. Persistence is key. I think that goes for conservation work as well.
Yep,
Just keep
definitely.
trying.
Yep.
Eventually you'll get there.
Who needs groceries this week? Keep going.
And someone's asked about your future projects, what you've got in the pipeline for the next few years. What does that look like for you?
So I did have some more speaking engagements and workshops that were supposed to happen this year. So they've been pushed into next year. So I'll continue my National Geographic speaking tour, which is actually about the making of the Black Panther
Oh,
documentary.
nice.
Yeah. I have some workshops in Spain and some keynote speaking. On the filming front, the back issue with some other health challenges has prevented me from being in the field lately
Yeah.
as much as I'd like. So the back was a little over 2 years ago, and I'm still not
Well,
able to do
backs are
anything.
tricky as well.
Yeah, as soon as I think I'm good, I do some heavy lifting and we're kind of back to square
Yeah.
one. So, and of course, filming is so physical, especially when it's bumpy roads and out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm taking it easy on that front. But my husband and I have a production company and he's busy. So as a business, we have quite a few projects in the pipeline, including for National Geographic, BBC, Netflix. So there's a lot happening. And I'll do little bits of field work here and there, just not full time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Health comes first. You only get one back, as my mum always says whenever I
Yeah.
hurt mine.
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
Still learning.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, so that's all the questions that were sent in beforehand, but some people have submitted them as we've been going, and some I'm just looking through them now. We can try and get through them. Someone said, how would you suggest ocean conservation photography can be done better for small organizations?
That's probably more your
Yeah.
industry. I mean, from a photography perspective, I think it's just like somehow triggering emotion. I think that's how you're going to get the most response from people, fundraising, that kind of thing, which is hard to articulate in an image because you kind of have to see it to feel something. It's not really
Yeah.
necessarily a formula of things you can just say. Yeah, I mean, how would you respond to that?
I think that it's not a gap that we have anymore because we're partnered with Photographers Without Borders, which was built specifically to bridge the gap. But I think that there is a gap with small NGOs where kind of what I was saying earlier with like needing media to create a meaningful campaign, but not having the funds to pay a
Yeah,
really good photographer, videographer to come out and create that media. But equally, if you have rubbish media, you're not going to make as much like money fundraising or anything like that. So
Yeah.
there is a gap
Act.
there. Yeah. But Photographers Without Borders was started to specifically bridge that gap, and they very much
Okay.
did that for us. Like, we were very lucky they came on board, and I started the organization in 2015. They came on board in 2016. So like
Amazing.
1 year, and then we had some. And the first guy that came out has now worked on like Blue Planet and stuff. So he was like amazing. But I think what you're saying with like storytelling and a lot of like underwater photography, you can take like nice photos, but they don't necessarily mean much.
Yeah.
So ocean conservation
Have
is
to have
quite
that
difficult to,
story.
yeah, to
Mm,
like
that's
communicate the
tricky.
problem. But I guess it
Good
would be
question.
that. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, okay. Someone asked a question. I think it was like a career question that I saw that popped up. How can you get started in a career in wildlife photography during this pandemic?
Practice. Take the opportunity to practice on whatever you can find that's moving around. I mean, even if you're in a city, there's going to be birds, and honestly, if you can do bird photography well, everything else is almost easier because birds are tricky. So I think just take the opportunity if you have the time to practice and network. Use your social media to network, because honestly, everyone is in the same boat, which means we're all spending probably more time online and on social media than we were before, which means maybe we're more likely to have messages seen. So if you're reaching out to organizations or people, you know, this is a great time to be trying to do that if you're trying to get work or offer services in preparation for when movement, more movement is allowed, or just to start building relationships, because that's going to be key.
Mm.
If you're trying to reach out to people, just be, and certainly high profile people or organizations, just understand that they do get contacted a lot. And so try to provide some value as opposed to asking for something all the time, because that does happen a lot. And it's, it's hard to sometimes filter through to actually stand out on those messages. So put an effort into your messages and just keep reaching out. Yeah.
Yeah. Persistence again. Someone asked how you got into your first project. I know you mentioned that you did. They haven't specified if that's paid or unpaid, so take that as you will.
I mean, so when I used to run, so I shot a lot of editorial back in Australia, which is wildlife related, reptile related. So I was just reaching out to publications to offer, and obviously I had to have something to show for it. So those were all motivated, self-commissioned shoots of whatever I could find and my pet reptiles. And then I started a pet photography business, and I did that for about 7 years in Australia, and that was really fantastic, because what I would do is go to rescue shelters, take photos of the animals that needed adoption. Obviously, I did that for free, but it helped adoption rates, but it also then connected me and had my work seen by all these people that were potentially adopting pets. And then, of course, the people that did then knew my work and maybe wanted a full photo shoot of their new pet. Snowball. And,
Yeah.
combination of just creating work so that you've got it ready to show for when the opportunity arises, so you're ready technically, and that someone, if they're going to pay you, can have some trust in the quality that they're going to get back for that. So you have to have like a showcase of work
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
and create your
Um,
own opportunities. That was definitely a theme for my career. Yeah.
Someone's asked, how was your experience in Kabini in search of leopards?
Kabini. So that's where we did the Black Panther
Oh,
documentary.
okay, right, okay.
Kabini, which is in southwest India. So, I mean, it was amazing. Very challenging project, but such a beautiful part of the world. Full of tigers as well. Obviously, normal colored leopards, langur monkeys and peacocks, and all different deer species. So it was amazing because having a background and being based in Africa and then just suddenly going to a different continent and immersing in all this unique wildlife, having to learn new sounds, new species, how to track differently. In Africa, we track a lot by looking at the ground and looking for markings and spoor and different things. Whereas in India, it was so dense that you couldn't do that. That wasn't a reliable form of tracking. So it was all about the sounds of the forest, alarm calls of different monkey species and birds, and yeah, completely different way. So it was fascinating. Yeah.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, it was magic.
Someone's actually asked about your gear setup. Well, what do you use, and also what would you recommend a camera and a zoom lens for a beginner?
Ooh, okay. I mean, there's infinite combinations and possibilities, and it comes down to so many factors. So I can just speak from experience, which is I've shot Nikon always. That's just the way it went. No, not for any particular reason, and I'm very happy with that as a body. But lens-wise, I shoot Nikon, Tamron, Sigma, Zeiss, whatever's going to do the job for me. And they all have like great pros and cons. One of my go-to lenses for wildlife definitely is the Tamron 150 to 600, which is a really nice range, but it is a lens that's compact enough to be handheld. So that's really nice. You don't have to, it's a somewhat affordable lens for that focal length. And I don't need to use a tripod or a monopod with it, which I prefer not to. I'd rather just be handheld and free to move around. But in saying that, these days, mirrorless camera options, it's all getting smaller, more affordable. There is some incredible stuff out there. So I wouldn't say quote me on that as like your intro gear. Do the research, see what you can afford, look at the reviews. And then, you know, if I go into the filming side of things, I mean, there's a myriad of stuff. I film primarily on RED, digital cinema, so that's the camera brain. And then we put, you know, a different combination of lenses. There'll be gimbal work, because we like to do a lot of smooth tracking and moving, drones, anything you can imagine, we'll use it.
Nice.
There's a lot of gear, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a time for one more question before we move on to our quick fire questions. Actually, well, we kind of answered both of the questions that have been submitted. Anyone who's missed any of this, we're going to check this on our IGTV afterwards and on our YouTube. So if you've got questions about getting started in a career, Shannon already kind of spoke about how to get your foot in the door, so you can check it out there. So if it's all right with you, we'll jump straight into the quickfire questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
So these are just, for people that haven't seen our Q&A before, these are just fun quickfire questions, which we just run through, and they're not necessarily related to anything conservation, but so it's just for us to get to know you better.
Oh dear. Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, favorite ocean creature?
Octopus.
Favorite day of the week?
Every day. They're all the same. There's no office job here.
Yeah, I guess it's when you love your job, it's not quite.
It all blends into one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plastic free or eco product that you can't live without?
My glass coffee cup.
Nice. Yeah, coffee in the mornings. Favorite beach in the world?
Lamu, northern Kenya.
Oh, nice.
The whitest sand I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot. I come from Australia and we have great beaches.
Yeah, that's true. I'll put it
Yeah.
on the list.
Yeah, it's magic.
What was the last song you listened to?
I don't know specifically, but it would be by Billie Eilish.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Dolphins or sharks?
Sharks. I like it.
Correct
I like
answer.
the underdog. Yeah. Or the
Um,
controversial one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite holiday?
I don't remember my last. Oh, actually, I did go back to Australia for the first time in 7 years to visit family. So that
Nice.
was really the only holiday I've had in a long, long, long time. Yeah.
Favorite and only.
Yeah.
Um, would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to speak to animals?
Definitely speak to animals. No question. I am desperate to know what my cat is saying to me. I probably wouldn't like it, but I still want to know.
I had that with our dog here, and then I just realised that she's probably just saying biscuits, biscuits, biscuits over and
Yeah,
over
I think a
again.
dog would be more diplomatic. I somehow think knowing what a cat's saying would be much more offensive. Yeah, they wouldn't
Probably.
sugarcoat it. Yeah.
um, as a superpower, teleportation or breathing underwater?
Oh, definitely breathing underwater. I mean, that would
Yeah,
be amazing. But then, of course, teleportation kind of, it'd be super handy, but it takes the fun out of a lot of the projects, which is the journey. Like, that's half the fun of getting there.
yeah, yeah. Although someone pointed out a while
Challenging.
ago that you could teleport up to the surface, take a breath, and teleport.
Ah,
Technically,
yeah,
you always get
didn't
the
think of
smart
that.
asses.
Yeah.
um, uh, what book would you take with you onto a desert island?
I'm more of a podcast girl,
Oh yeah,
but it'd be anything true crime. I'm obsessed.
true crime. Nice.
Oh, yeah.
First thing you're going to do when things get back to normal?
I mean, travel internationally, of course. I'm not sure where. Hopefully, it will be recreational. Otherwise, it would be Canada, which is the first stop on my speaking tour again. So,
Oh, nice. And finally, why do you love the oceans?
uh, a combination of reasons. I think part of it is the mystery of it. It's I feel like there's still so much unknown. It's so massive. It's hard to even comprehend. It really. And also, whenever I say scuba dive, it's so peaceful. Like that all-encompassing peace. I just want to be able to stay down there forever. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like meditation.
Yes, exactly. There's
Yeah.
something also about like not being able to really, your awareness is really kind of focused. You don't have the
You
same
literally
spatial
have blinker
awareness.
vision.
Yeah. And I think it just makes you really just focus, which
Yeah.
is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely meditation for our staff here. If
Yeah.
people get kicked off dives and aren't allowed to dive for a week for whatever reason, they get
Oh, that's the
grouchy.
punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
We're
the
like, go for
punishment.
a dive and you'll feel better afterwards.
100%. Yeah. It's a whole other world.
Yeah, a whole other world.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all of our questions that we had.
Amazing.
I'm just checking if anyone's sent any through in the meantime. There's not been any sent through. So, are there any upcoming projects that you want to tell our audience about, or anything that you want them to be aware of?
Uh, I think, I mean, my primary focus right now is really building Wild in Africa bracelets. And we've recently released 2 new charity bracelets, so I definitely recommend checking those out. And there's a few more in the pipeline, so I'm working on. So I'm very excited about that. Can't say yet. But yeah, just go through, have a look at what we do.
What's the website for
And
that?
Wild in Africa .store.
Cool.
Yeah.
I will definitely go and
Or
check that out.
Instagram, there is a link to my Instagram profile, and you can get the website there.
Cool, perfect. How much are those bracelets? We did actually have a question from someone that
Okay.
asked
So
how much they were.
they vary. They start from about $35 US, and then we go up from there depending on stack combinations. Our charity bracelets are 40 US, and 50% of that purchase price goes directly to the charity straight off. So it's
Wow.
not a matter of, percentage of profits or portion or anything ambiguous. So if you buy
Yeah.
a bracelet for a specific charity, you know how much is exactly going there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd recommend going onto our website. You can check out all the charities and the incredible work they do, because there's all different ones depending on what appeals to you, and they're all really worth checking out and supporting, whether it's through us or directly. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, for anyone that missed anything during this Q&A, you'll be able to check this on our YouTube channel and on our IGTV afterwards. And I'm sure if you DM Shannon questions, then she'll try and get back to you, and we'll do the same. And you can click on the top left-hand corner, I think, for audience members, and
We
follow
can't
both
tell if we're
accounts.
reverse or
Yeah, one
I
of the
actually can't
sides
see
of the
myself
top.
at all, so I don't know what's happening.
um, and you can follow both accounts and keep up to date with everything that's going on. We haven't got a whole lot going on at the moment because of lockdown here, so you'll just see anything that's going on online on our Instagram. And
Are you still diving though?
no, we're not allowed to. So literally all I
Really?
can do is get out on the SUP and get whale data from there.
Oh no.
Yeah, we're just about to launch. Well, it's very early days, but we're putting plans together to launch a project with the fishermen to tackle sustainability of the fishing that's going on, because fishing's actually, like, I've had so many people be like, oh wow, COVID's probably saved the oceans, and actually fishing's increased like tenfold here because people are relying on the sea as a food resource more.
Right.
So
Same
it's actually got
thing
worse.
here with subsistence poaching. Yeah.
So we want to tackle that. So we're just
Oof.
putting together a project to work with the fishermen and the community on that kind of thing at the moment. But that's still very much in the pipeline. So still having those
Well, I look
meetings.
forward to being able to come and visit you, because you're right next
Yes,
door.
definitely.
I'm
Not far at
based near
all.
Kruger, so I'm just on the other side of the
Oh,
border. I could
wow.
drive there
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
in a few
You've
hours.
definitely got to come up and visit
Yeah, so
100%.
once we're allowed to move around, I'll come
Yeah,
over and do beach time.
definitely, definitely come
Yeah,
over and
that'd
have a, you can see the whales and come out on the steps with us.
be yes.
Yeah, it'd be great. Okay, well,
Awesome.
thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for
Really
having me.
appreciate it. And
It's been
have a
fun.
great evening. Yeah,
You too.
thank you so much.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.